Hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and welcome everybody to Beyond the Mushroom Cloud, the economics of nuclear aggression. We're really excited that folks are coming in to this discussion today. Give you a chance to kind of get yourself settled, and really happy that we have a chance to chat about the financing behind nuclear weapons. So I'm Susie Snyder. I'm the program coordinator at ICANN. And one of my special areas of focus is our work with the financial sector to bring about the end of nuclear weapons. And that's why I'm so excited and so pleased to introduce Alejandra Munoz today. She's a senior project officer at PAX in the Netherlands. And one of the many things that Alejandra does at PAX is produce the regular Don't Bank on the Bomb research reports. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about that work, talk about financial aspects of nuclear weapons, talk about the report, and be able to go a little bit deeper into some of these issues. Now, we know there's a tiny bit of a sound issue on our end. It's just a little bit of a buzzing. So don't worry about it. It is coming from our side, and there's no need for you to adjust your headphones. Again, I'd like to welcome you here to Beyond the Mushroom Cloud, the economics of nuclear aggression, and welcome Alejandra to our chat today. I'd like to start off by asking you, Alejandra, why you work on the financial aspects of nuclear weapons.
Well, first of all, hi to everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks to all who are joining this conversation. So, to answer your question, Susie, well, I started to work on the topic of nuclear weapons almost 3 years ago, and at that time, I didn't work yet on the financial aspects of the issue, but almost 3 years ago, I started to work on the topic of nuclear disarmament. And before that, I didn't know that much about the topic or about the debates surrounding the nuclear weapon issue. But the more you learn about it, the more you read about it, and the more you hear the arguments also in favor of holding on to nuclear weapons, it really becomes quite obvious how absurd the situation is that we find ourselves in with regards to this topic. So I work at PAX, a Dutch peace organization, and the Netherlands, of course, it's a country that's says to hold democratic values in high regard, to hold international law in high regard. We're hosting all of these international institutions like the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. But then at the same time, we're also a host country to these weapons of mass destruction that are stationed on our territory. But it's not publicly acknowledged, so we cannot have a debate about it. We can't say anything about it. So really, yeah, as I said, a really absurd situation if you think about it, and it's almost like you're watching some strange play. But that also motivates to challenge this status quo, as it's ridiculous as it is, and call for things to be different. And I like how the campaign against nuclear weapons has really brought all of these different actors and groups together. Not just people working for NGOs or governments, but also medical experts, scientists, the communities affected by nuclear weapon use, artists, municipalities, and also increasingly we're seeing how the financial community is playing more and more a prominent role in this movement, and not just as one of the actors that we are trying to influence, or that we like to point at as a good example to others, but really also as advocates themselves, taking part in discussions and calling for things to be better. being in some cases even already a step ahead of their own governments. And I think those are really exciting developments, and it's great to be involved through the Don't Bank on the Bone work.
That's great. I mean, I think that exposing absurdity and then finding a way to act on it is a really powerful thing, and it's something that you help provide through these reports. Now, you just launched this major report, and it is massive. And I encourage everyone to take a look at it, at least dive into the executive summary, because this is a massive analysis of the companies that are involved in the nuclear weapons industry, the investors behind them, and it's just so much information. I mean, there's hundreds of points of information in this report. So if you're somebody, if you imagine yourself just a few years ago when you started to uncover the absurdity of nuclear weapons and you came across this report, what is it that you'd want people to remember most about it? What is it that attracted you to this report that kind of piques your curiosity the most as you put it together?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's true. There's really a lot of information in there, and that's also something I found interesting about writing it, about really diving more into these companies, and it's really valuable to we work together with a research consultancy that looks into the financial institutions financing these companies, and there's really a lot of information that can be found and that we can use in our reports. But I guess what I want people to take out of it most is that things are changing. These are not just static reports that we publish every year, and where every year we are naming and shaming the same number of investors or the same list of investors that are making money available to the nuclear weapon industry. Because what we're actually seeing is that while the total value of investments has gone up for the third year in a row now, where our findings are showing fewer financial institutions with significant investments in the companies that build nuclear weapons. And this makes sense in a context where, especially in the last decade, we can see that investors are increasingly incorporating more ethical and sustainability considerations in their decisions, in their investment strategies. And it also makes sense in a context where global support for the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and the international norm against nuclear weapons is growing, and that includes support within the financial sector. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because of course, when looking at the current security situation, with what we've seen over the past 2 years since the invasion of Ukraine, with escalating tensions on a global level, one can easily get pessimistic, and the situation can look quite grim. And of course, these are concerning developments, but they can also easily overshadow the fact that we're also seeing these positive steps, and we are seeing progress. And so that's what I hope that people will take out of it.
Thanks. I think that's so exciting. The fact that there is this very tangible demonstration of a vision of a world without nuclear weapons. I mean, these are investors, and you said 3 years in a row that the number has dropped of investors providing support for companies that build nuclear weapons, providing support for the nuclear weapons industry. And very rarely can we so specifically measure the change in global attitude. I mean, yeah, we could do these polls and we can ask people, but really, who answers polls? Like, it's old ladies that answer landlines, right? Nobody really answers polls, right? It's hard to get a sense of public opinion. But here, through this Don't Bank on the Bomb report, you have provided this amazing snapshot of global financial opinion on an industry that's designed for mass destruction. And there's very few things that really show this progress so deeply and so specifically. And it's such a cool thing to see. And I'm so glad about it. I'm so glad that we can look at this. We can show that there is hope even after the invasion of Ukraine, that there is hope even after this constant flock to war, that there is an alternative that is being embraced. And I think that's just an amazing resource. But there's more. What else is in that report?
Yeah, there's definitely more in there. So as I mentioned, it's an annual publication, and this report, it basically has two main components. So on the one hand, we look at the involvement of 24 companies in the production of nuclear weapons. And so we profile these companies in the reports, and these are companies that are all significantly involved in the nuclear weapon industry by either producing key components or providing key services to different nuclear weapon arsenals, either to the United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, India, or China. So what we do in the report is that we describe the contracts awarded to these companies by nuclear armed states. For what type of activities are they contracted? What nuclear weapon system are they contributing to? And also, of course, how much money are they getting for these contracts? And so in this list of 24 companies, there's companies that are well-known defense companies like Lockheed Martin or the British BAE Systems that are supporting the US and UK nuclear arsenals, and in the case of BAE Systems, also the French nuclear arsenal. But then we're also seeing other companies like Boeing or Airbus that, of course, are well known for their commercial planes as well, or other companies like the US company Honeywell, which offers technology services for all types of sectors, but then also manages and operates several US sites responsible for nuclear weapon production and modernization. So different types of companies on there. And then the other component of the reports is that we also list the financial institutions that are financing these companies. So here we're talking about the banks, the pension funds, the asset managers, and other financial institutions that are investing in one or more of these 24 companies. So if you have a read in the report, you can see how your country is doing, how many financial institutions in your country have come up in our findings, if any. It also distinguishes the type of investment. So are we talking about a loan, or are these shares or bond holdings? And then also how much money we're talking about. So what is the value of shares that are being held, or how much money is provided through loans? And then finally, we also list the biggest investors and the biggest lenders.
Wow. So I was digging through the report a little bit, and one of the things that jumped out at me, I was looking at it, I was thinking about Boeing, right? And Boeing's had a rough few years. Let's not, we don't have to be shy about that. It's true. Boeing's had a hard time. And it seemed like the loans that Boeing was going after and the loan amounts to Boeing were higher than I'd ever seen, for something like 49 billion in loans just to Boeing. And I was wondering if, I know lending, and when a bank chooses to lend money to a company, it's not a quick decision. Like, they have a process to decide. It's not like, it's not like me walking into my local bank saying, "Hey, I'd like to buy a house. Can you lend me some money?" Right? It's a much more intensive process, I'd imagine. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the lending and the findings around loans that were in this report.
So, I mentioned how the total value of investments has gone up, and that's partially due to the fact that we see an increase in loans. And you're right. Like it's not a quick decision if a bank decides to loan to loan money to a company. I mean, there's a risk assessment. We're often talking about. I mean, loans often last several years, sometimes even 10 years. So we're talking about long-term investments. Some of the arguments that we sometimes hear from banks is that they're saying, well, this is a company that's also, yes, they are involved in nuclear weapons, but they're also involved in other types of sectors. And that's what we support. You know, we're not financing nuclear weapons, we're financing their other activities. So we hear this more often. But what we're saying is that, yes, but you're still talking about the same company. And so even if you include something in a contract saying it can really only go to nuclear weapon production, or it cannot go to nuclear weapon production, there's no way to exclude. There's the possibility that this will still happen, because if you finance one activity of a company, there's always the possibility that may free up capital for another activity. And if that other activity is nuclear weapon production, well, that's problematic, and that means you should stay away in its entirety from that company.
I think that's a really interesting thing, and it's something that I know when I've looked at these things a little bit, it used to kind of trip me up. And I had to think about it a little bit differently, like, you know, with this idea of financing coming in and freeing up money for other stuff. And I put it in the context of thinking about when I give my kid some cash, right? And like my kid takes out the trash, you know, for 2 weeks running and sets the table and does all the things they need to do and earns a little money. And he has a little plan. Oh, I'm gonna use this much money for a new video game. I'm going to use this much money to go bowling, and I'm going to use this much money to go to the movies. Well, if I give him money to go bowling, but he's already got money from his granddad, then he could take that money I gave him and just put it in his movie pot, right? And it's just that idea that once the money comes in, you get to do anything you want with it, and it frees up these other funds for other things. And I think I know a lot more institutions have policies saying they won't finance projects related to weapons of mass destruction or nuclear weapons, but that doesn't make much of a difference if you can free up that general money to go into it. So I think that this shift is interesting. It's good to be able to dig into it just a bit more.
I think that's a great analogy. I should use that in my next meeting with the pocket money.
Yeah. Because it's, some money goes for candy, some money goes for video games. I say here, you can have this, €2 for candy. Oh, no, I'm going to stick it in the video game pocket. It's, hey, this is what happens. So you talked about these 24 companies that are involved in the nuclear weapons industry. And I wonder, do you think they'll change? Do you think we can actually change them?
Yes, I think we can. This is not something that will happen overnight, but I do think we can. There's a reason that we are engaging with the financial sector. It's an incredibly important player in our economy. They are the ones driving the economy. And so most companies are reliant on external financing on a regular basis to be able to do what they do, to build their production capacity and to carry out their activities. And so the financial institutions financing a company enable that company to carry out its activities. And if one of those activities is nuclear weapon production, then that's problematic. And that's why we are naming them in our reports. But of course, on the flip side, that also means that the financial sector can influence the activities of companies in a positive manner. And if there's one bank who says to a company, we want to end all financial relations, or we don't want to have any association with you due to your involvement in nuclear weapon production, then that may not yet create so much pressure. But the more financial institutions decide to do so, and clearly express this, the less attractive it will be for that company to continue its involvement in this industry. And this can also have a domino-like effects, because financial institutions will take into account what their peers are doing when adopting or revisiting their policies, or they'll be asked about it. And they could get a question like, "Oh, this other pension fund stopped investing in Boeing because of their involvement in nuclear weapons. Why are you still investing?" So they will get these questions, and in turn, that can also positively affect the scope of activities of the companies. A couple of years ago, it was reported that the British company Serco would no longer bid on any contracts related to nuclear weapons, and that this had been the result of pressure from investors who viewed the company's previous involvement in the nuclear weapon industry as not being in line with their responsible investment standards. So these exclusions aren't merely symbolic; they can actually contribute to change. So yes, I think we can change these companies, but maybe also to just add one more thing here as well, because I think it's important to also note that our engagement with the financial sector is, it's not an isolated strategy. I said at the beginning, there's so many different actors and groups involved in the broader campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. And so the work around Dome Bank on the Bomb, it's very much connected to those other strategies where campaigners are trying to influence government positions or increase awareness among the public, or add a voice to academic discussions, or work with parliamentarians. So it really is a joint effort where all of these different strategies come together, and what I think is also one of the strengths of the campaign.
Thanks. I think thanks. I think that it's amazing when you think about that this company that was involved in the UK atomic weapons establishment for years said no more, and that it was partly supported through this particular type of effort, through this engagement with the financial sector. And I've been thinking a lot about how different actors kind of push each other. So there's stuff that we do as researchers, there's stuff that we do as activists, there's stuff that we do as advocates. But then I think, and you mentioned this, there's a peer pressure that also builds and gets one financial institution to support another financial institution's activities. And we see this more and more as a kind of race to the top on who has both the most ethical and environmentally sustainable and socially responsible investment portfolios, but also in the way that some institutions seem to be challenging one another to do better, and putting that out publicly. Sometimes through ad campaigns. I remember a Belgian bank that said, "Hey, you wouldn't want to finance nuclear weapons in your neighborhood." Well, neither do we, and use it as an ad campaign to encourage people to sign up with that particular bank. And then we also see the way that some institutions are criticizing and critical of others that are meant to be setting the tone and setting the pace, especially those who are connected to governments. And I was thinking about KLP and the Norwegian bank and the Norwegian government pension fund Global, which is was initially one of the first ones that challenged the concept of controversial weapons investments from a government pension side. And I'm wondering if you've come across others, or if you've been in touch with KLP or the Norwegian government pension fund global about this race to the top that they have in building each other and challenging each other to do better.
Yeah. So, well, as part of the broader Don't Bank on the Bomb research, we do exactly that as well. We also this is then the Hall of Shame report, as we also call it, but we also have a Hall of Fame. This is a report that we published last summer in July, and there we look at which financial institutions are actually doing well. So and also there we're seeing that over time, because we've also been publishing those reports over the years, that over time we've been able to include in our findings more and more financial institutions with policies against investments in the nuclear weapon industry, and so we have a Hall of Fame, and those are the financial institutions that are really doing well. So KLP is on there as well, and we also have runners-up lists where we include the institutions that have policies in place, but where there's still certain loopholes or there's still certain exceptions to the policy that still, in many cases, still allows for some investments in the nuclear weapon industry. So we're saying, like, yeah, it's good that you have something there, but you're not there yet. But for that report and that research is also a great tool, because it opened doors to engage with these institutions, because they want to be. As you mentioned, it's a race to the top. They want to be listed as a good example. So we're happy often to see progress there as well, when we can add an institution that was previously in the runners-up list to the Hall of Fame.
That's great. It's great to hear that that's growing, and it's so nice to also have a space where you can celebrate the good guys. A lot of times working on nuclear weapons, we talk about the bad guys. So it's nice that we can really name these actors who are doing well. We can support them and we can challenge them to go further, to do better. And that's why I kind of want to transition a little bit into something coming up. So in June, from the 17th to the 23rd of June this year, ICANN is coordinating a week of action, No Money for Nuclear Weapons. And money in nuclear weapons comes in many shapes and sizes, many currencies, if you will. And I was wondering, from your perspective, you're a coordinator of this amazing resource. How do you think people can use the Don't Bank on the Bomb report and the resources you've generated during that week of action?
Well, I would say have a look at the reports. Have a look and see if your bank or your pension funds is on there. And if so, ask them why they are investing in companies involved in nuclear weapon production, and encourage them to do better. We've been talking about peer pressure and financial institutions looking at what others are doing, but we also see that many of the financial institutions that have adopted or strengthened their policies on this issue have done so, among others, because their customers ask them to. So that is definitely something we would encourage.
Great. And I think that's something that we would encourage as well. We know that it's been very effective for customers of financial institutions, for bank customers, to go in and ask for a meeting with bank managers at their local branch to talk about the bank's investment policies, to talk about the overall bank's financing relationships with companies involved in the production of nuclear weapons. The branch manager, your local branch manager on the local high street, may not have answers about the bank's overall policy, but by starting that conversation, you can kind of kick the story up, and you can demonstrate, like, if you're willing to request a meeting with a bank manager, your bank manager is going to report that up the chain, and it has quite an impact when all of these institutions are deciding how are they addressing environmental, social, and governance issues. How are they revising their defense sector policies? What are they going to do next? And so we know that just going into the bank can actually have some impact in what the bank decides to do, where to put its money. We also know that there's other ways that money is connected. I mean, I heard from several people after the launch of this report last week that they went to their local banks and they withdrew all of their funds because their bank was on the Don't Bank on the Bomb list of investors. And now they're writing to the newspapers, their local newspapers, to say why they have to change banks and why they were personally moved to make that change. And some of them emailed in response to the report and said, "Oh, I'm doing this, and this." I would have said, "Wait a second. First, talk to the bank. Tell them you're thinking about doing this. Tell them you want to see them change their policy. And then, when they don't, or if they don't, then come back and move your money." It's a lot of work to set up a new bank account. So start a process. And that's a process, I think, that people can start now. Now that we have this report, and there's so many fewer investors than there used to be. It's amazing to see, but there's still enough investors to reach out to, and a lot of them will have branches wherever people are, because a lot of these financial institutions operate in many different countries, even in some countries that are maybe supportive of a nuclear weapon-free world and not supportive of nuclear weapons in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's really great that people have this cool list they can go to and just ask those on the list to make some changes. So I think that's really great, and I hope that people do that. And as we get closer to the week of action, of course, we'll talk about other ways that money is connected to nuclear weapons, whether it be from governments and other ways those companies are using their money to kind of buy influence and more. So I hope people stay in touch and stay tuned for things coming up, and get involved and sign up for the Week of Action now, so you can be the first one to get those resources as they're developed and rolled out. But Alejandra, you just published this massive thing. I'm sure you're taking a few days off, or you're planning on taking a few days off to kind of catch your breath. But what's next for Don't Bank on the Bomb?
Well, I will be taking a few days off. That's true. So in addition to our research, which we will continue, we're also hoping to again engage more with campaigners or others that are already or want to become more active on this issue in their national context. So, we've talked about what you can do as an individual, but also how you can organize yourself as a local campaign in terms of raising more awareness on this issue, or putting pressure on the institutions that are based in their country. So if you're joining this call and you're thinking of doing more on this issue and you'd like to get in touch, please do reach out.
That's great. So as we're coming to the close, because we don't want to keep people for too long on a Monday afternoon. But I wonder, Alejandra, if there's anything else that I should have asked you today and forgot or didn't think to. Anything else you'd like to share with folks?
I don't think there's been anything you forgot, but maybe, I would like to mention that, the production of these reports, they're also very much a joint effort. So also a big thank you to you, Susie, and others who supported the research, the writing, the launch of this publication, and a thank you to everyone who will help share the report in the coming time and use it in their own activities.
That's great. Thank you so much. And just for folks listening, a reminder that you can find all of this information on don'tbankonthebomb.com. There is great information. You can find the reports going back more than a decade. So you can track how your bank has done year after year and see if the investments have gone up work on down. And there's tons of resources on that site as well. Everything from a script, if you want to give your bank a call, if you want to call customer service, to a campaigner guide, if you want to start up a local group that works on a specific bank. And there are so many groups around the world who are working to change the behavior of the financial sector for the better, and who are working also in partnership with some banks and some financial institutions that are making a choice for a world that they want to live in, not necessarily the world that we live in right now, and are really putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to building that world together. So take a look on the don'tbankonthebomb.com website for all this information, the good guys, the bad guys, and how you can get involved. And stay in touch with ICANN as we get ready for this global week of action on to say no money for nuclear weapons, because together we can build this world, and together we can pull out the finances from nuclear weapons and start spending it on things that we really need, things that we really want. So Alejandra, thank you so much for your incredible work, for this research that you have done, for making this tool that is so helpful for all of us. And thank you everybody who has tuned in today. We look forward to seeing you as we come up to new events and new opportunities. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.